everyone, it's Lindsay from My Crafty Plans. Welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, welcome. Today is the day I am ready to put pen to paper and set my annual goals for 2025, or at least get started on the process. Is going to be part 1 of 2 in setting up my annual goals in my MAKSELIFE flagship planner for the year. I have my MAKSELIFE flagship planner right here. It is the 2025 vertical edition. This is my main planner and really kind of my only planner for the year. If you haven't already seen it, I do have a planner lineup video used. I have some other supporting characters and helpers, but I am committing to being in one planner, one all-in-one hub for the year, and I'm really, really excited to give that a try. 2025 is going to be the year of simplifying the systems, and part of that is having this one central planner. I am also going to be using the pages, or some of the pages from the annual goals toolkit to help support my startup in the goals. I've done so much pre-work for this year for getting started with goal setting. It's really important to me to set meaningful goals every year, but especially this year because I did abandon my 2024 goals halfway through the year. If you want to hear more about that and where I'm at right now, you can check out my last video up on this channel, which was my reflections vlog. I've got all of that reflections work actually done on my iPad, plus like a ton of brainstorming and other stuff that I've already done for goal setting, for intentions, for my word of the year, all of that, which I've mostly done all of the pre-work this year on my iPad, which is a new experience, but I really enjoyed it. The best part about it, I will say for me, is that it means that I can work on it kind of anywhere, anywhen. And that has been like a real game changer with the journaling. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll journal for like 15 or 30 minutes or think about goals for 15, 20 minutes before I go to bed. Lights off, PJs on, like teeth brush, the whole thing ready for bed, and just doing that right before I go to sleep. And that was a really, really powerful helper for me for getting my reflections notebook done, for really thinking and strategizing about my goals for this year. But now with all of those reflections all written out and so much brainstorming already having happened, I am ready to dive into this planner. So my goal setting video is going to be split into 2 videos this year. So this is going to be part 1. We are going to be writing in the planner as well as on a number of the annual goals toolkits pages. But in today's video, what we're going to do is I'm going to take the compass assessment, which I have already pre-done, but we're going to go ahead and get that transferred into my planner and talk about that process. We're going to work through a couple of the pages on the annual goals toolkit to brainstorm for my goals. I'm going to share where I'm at with my brainstorming process. So we're going to use a couple sheets in here. If you haven't seen this yet, check out my MAKSELIFE review crew videos in here. I share exactly what's in all of them. I do have these slightly out of order from the way that they came because I kind of put it in the order that I was going to use it. So these are all like the brainstorming cheat sheets that you can use. These have like thoughtful questions to ask yourself in each life area category and your goal setting quick tips. But what I'm going to use from here today is 1, we're going to work on the personal values after we do the compass assessment. And then we're going to do these life area assessments to get from our current score to a goal score, do some goals brainstorming, some feeling statements, and some themes for goals. Rather than writing down full goals, because that will go in the planner, I'm going to write down kind of my 3 main themes in each life category for what I'm thinking with my goals for this year. Then we're going to jump back into the planner, work on my intentions. I will reveal my word of the year. That will be where we wrap up this video. Then in part 2, we will actually set my goals in my planner, write them all out. We'll also fill out the pretty word of the year in here, get that lettered on there. And then also I'm working still on crafting a personal mission statement. So that will also be in part 2 of this video. I'm going to dive in. This is going to be sped up with a voiceover, and I'm going to be sharing a mix of my own personal goals and personal journey, along with how I completed the process and tips for completing the process yourself. I'm so excited to be sharing this with you. I'm so excited for 2025. Starting a new planner always makes me feel really enthusiastic, and that is just such a good feeling right now. So I'm gonna pull this out and dive right in. So the first thing that I'm going to fill out is the compass assessment. I'm just using the dot markers to add a little bit of color to the page, and then I'm going to score myself and then take the averages. I'm going to talk a little bit about my method for the compass assessment and for scoring myself in the life areas. But before I do that, I actually want to talk a little bit more about my general approach to MAKSELIFE and to goal setting for this year. And this process definitely started before I took the compass assessment, before I touched anything in this planner or even in the digital digital tools. And it also looked very different for me this year than it has in previous years. If you've not already watched the MAKSELIFE goal setting series, which was a series of lives that they did on YouTube, I highly recommend it. There were 3 videos, and the one that I particularly loved was actually the second one. It's available on their YouTube channel, and that second video was all about using AI to help you with your goal setting and basically to act as a sounding board and a life coach to help you set your goals. And I found it so incredibly interesting and also so supremely useful, and I did use AI to help me set my goals this year. The app that I used is called Pi. It's the one that MAKSELIFE recommended. It's totally free. It's just an app on your phone. There isn't a paid or upgraded version. It is just a free app, and it is really cool. It has been so helpful in the goal setting process, but I also know that I'm going to use it to help me kind of enhance my staying with my goals and my planning over the course of the year as well. So I'm really excited for that. Also, in addition to having the physical version of the flagship planner and the physical version of the annual goals toolkit, I also have the digital versions of those from MAKSELIFE. I did actually receive my whole MAKSELIFE review crew order as a gift from Moxie this year, which was so kind of them. And I also have all of the digital tools, both of those through the affiliate program and just my relationship with MAKSELIFE. I did just want to mention that for full disclosure, because I did kind of use all of the MAKSELIFE things this year. I did a ton of work on the digital versions of the planners and the toolkits, and I used that to kind of stage everything and for my brainstorming. And I know not everyone has digital and multiple physical copies and all of the things available to them, but I do want you to know that you can do this without the tools. You can do this with what you have, and you can actually do this completely for free. If you want, MAKSELIFE puts all of the goal setting pages and all of the things you need to know about their system and goal setting as a free printable downloadable from their website. All you need to do is give them your email address, and you don't have to buy anything. You can do the entire MAKSELIFE system for free if a full planner is not in your budget for this year. And I'll be sure to link the free printable part of their website down in the description below as well if you're looking for it. For me this year, the MAKSELIFE process really started with the reflections notebook. I spent a lot of time working on my 2024 reflections. I've got a whole vlog about it if you want to check that out, but I just didn't have a great year in 2024, and it was really important to me to kind of go back, reflect on that, reflect on what I could have done better, but also reflect on all of the things that did go super well. Even in a bad year, you still have good things happening and good things going on, things that you've accomplished. And I just felt really so much better about my year as a whole after completing the reflections process. From the reflections process, after I finished with that, which I used the iPad, you can check out some of my digital spreads in that reflection blog if you want to see them. But after that, I started feeding some of that into the Pi app, into that AI app, and using that to help brainstorm ideas for goals. And then I used some of the questions that were from the annual goals toolkit to work that in. And I sort of started thinking about goals a little bit before I actually took the compass assessment. Usually I would go right from reflections to the compass assessment, but I was just so excited about using the AI and like trying that out that I ended up kind of going into goals brainstorming, then circling back to the compass assessment, then revisiting the AI brainstorming and the goals brainstorming, and then, kind of transferring everything over to the page. And I will share some of like the tidbits that I got from AI and some of the actual conversations that I had with Pi as we get to the goals brainstorming part of this video. But first, let's talk a little bit about the compass assessment. What I've been doing on the screen is not actually reading through and answering the questions. It's just transferring over my scores. I did take this offline beforehand so that I could kind of sit with it and think about it. I took it only once this year and then just read through it again and adjusted scores as needed. The first year I ever did MAKSELIFE, the compass assessment was like my favorite thing ever. And it was the part of the process that really got me, that really resonated with me, that really jumped out at me, and that really helped me set my goals. In year 4, starting year 4, I don't actually find this all that helpful or insightful anymore. The questions are still the same, and I feel like I kind of have these questions kind of burned into my mind at this point. So taking the test again and again and again for me has really had diminishing returns. But it's a really good way to kind of recalibrate how I'm going to score myself for the year. I tend to be a person who scores myself pretty high, and because of that, I'm only going to get like small changes. And then I kind of start to approach that upper limit. So it's a really good way for me to kind of reset at the beginning of the year. this is the only time I took it this year. At the end of last year, I just scored myself subjectively based on like whether I felt better or worse than I did at the beginning of the year. And that's actually what I'll do at each of the quarterly assessments. I will keep things totally subjective, and I won't revisit this test again until it's time to set my 2026 goals. But so if you're newish to MAKSELIFE, you might find this really helpful. But if this doesn't resonate with you as strongly, especially as you move through the system, that seems very normal to me. And I think that different parts are going to resonate with you at different points of the year, and also as you kind of go from year to year. And this year, the reflections process really resonated with me way more so than it did last year or even the year before that. And you can kind of pick and choose too, right? If you feel like you have less time, you can choose to do the pieces that resonate more with you, or you can kind of really sit and do everything in case something is going to resonate with you more later in the year if you revisit these pages. After I put everything into the compass assessment in the planner, I also went through the goals worksheets and added in my rounded score. And I did use like a slightly subjective rounding. I'll only use like a half point on a number, so like 8, 8.59, that kind of scale for actually putting it in. Otherwise, it's just like really hard to draw into the planner. But I'm a math person, so I like seeing like the full 2 decimal number when I look on those pages in the planner if I want to look at that as well. And I do use a little bit of like subjective energy when I'm rounding this. So like I may push something higher or lower just depending on how I feel about it, rather than going with like a strict rounding. Then the last thing I did with the compass assessment was color it in onto the wheel. I have such a love-hate relationship with this, and I felt like my highlighters were so juicy while I was coloring, so I got out this brush to kind of smooth it out. This ended up being like a fairly big mistake. I mean, it's fine, but it did end up causing the highlighters to bleed a little bit through the page, so definitely don't recommend using a brush if that happens to you. It's not too terrible though, and it's just kind of representative of the overall theme. I was so careful with my handwriting throughout this video and like throughout using the planner, but I was really aggressive with the markers. I did then outline that with a pen just so I could see it a little bit better, and then later after I do my goals brainstorming, I'll go back and add in like a target goal score on this and on the toolkit worksheets. And that's where I went next, is to the toolkit worksheets, and I want to kind of explain how I use these. So I already had fed in like a bunch of stuff to AI at this point, and I was using a combination of the AI app Pi, Notion, which is just like a notebook and to-do listing app that I've always used on my phone and iPad, and then as well the MAKSELIFE digital version of both these worksheets and the planner itself. And that I use an app called GoodNotes for, and that you can use like right with your Apple Pencil, or you can type. I actually bought a keyboard for my iPad as well, which was super helpful. And then basically I distilled all of the back and forth with AI and like all of the notes I had in Notions, and then thoughts from the reflections notebook, and I kind of distilled that into brainstorming ideas. And then I used these worksheets to actually put those brainstorming ideas on paper, which usually what I would do is print out some of the goals sheets from the MAKSELIFE printable website, and I would use that as like my brainstorming space and my space to map things out on the page. But I just kind of did that on the iPad this year, and then also using these worksheets since I had them. I also do not go in order when I'm doing this. I do tend to jump around a little from like life area to life area, but I really like to go kind of easiest to hardest. So even though I'm starting with personal on the screen here, that's not where I started in the process. I actually started with work and learning this year because that was my strongest, most improved life area from last year. And I had a really good idea of kind of what I wanted to do in that area. And in contrast to that, personal was actually the life area that I felt weakened the most last year, and was an area where I really struggled, and I wasn't feeling as ready to set goals in that. So for me, it's always easier to kind of capture some of that low-hanging fruit and get the ball rolling and just kind of hype yourself up a little bit by tackling some like easier to think about goals, easier to express goals, or ideas that you already have in your brain. So I use the part at the bottom to come up with like 3 themes. I think I have more than 3 goals in most of my life areas this year, and I usually do, but so I just wanted to kind of have this be like the themes for my goals. So for the personal category, my themes are going to be planning functionally and consistency. And then My second theme was to modernize my planner routine to incorporate paper and digital tools. And then my third goal was to share my journey for motivation and to help build community and connect with others. And in that last one, I am like specifically thinking about my channels and social media. Where social media sits in my goals has bounced around a lot, but this year it's going back into the personal category. So for the work and learning category, which I'm working on now, I'm going to read you my main themes first, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about how I used AI to kind of arrive at those themes and used it to help me shape my goals. So I have a freelance business. If you don't know, it's nothing related to planners or social media. It's actually fairly like more technical. And I work for myself through an agency, and I had just an absolutely smashing and astonishing year of growth last year. But I do really feel like it came at the expense of other life areas. So here are my themes for next year. Creating a project consideration rubric, a more organized project and work file system, and then my business is aligned with my long-term goals without burning out in the short term. So I literally typed into Pi, I have my own freelance business. Last year I had amazing growth, but I feel like it came at the expense of some of my other life areas. And this year I'd like to maintain my business and still be aligned with kind of the long-term vision for my business, but I would really like to have a better work-life balance. Can you help me set goals to support that, given what you know about the MAKSELIFE framework and what we've already talked about for my 2024 reflections, which I had already kind of fed a lot of that stuff in there. And it is able to kind of remember the things you talked about and use that to help it like prompt you. It'll ask you questions. It's really, really cool. So it fed me back a lot about procrastination, since I had talked a lot about procrastination in my reflections work, and was like, hey, what kinds of things can we do to help you avoid procrastination? You know, setting internal deadlines, using time blocking and time management skills. And it kind of fed that back to me. And then I'm able to shape that into a goals brainstorming idea and then actually into a final goal that's going to end up in my planner in part 2. Additionally, I talked about how like I felt like sometimes during the year I was saying yes to every single project I was offered, and sometimes I was saying no to every single project I was offered, and how I really wanted to try and be more thoughtful about how I approach saying yes and no to projects. And then it was like, hey, well, why don't you create a rubric? And then we would chat a little bit about the things that I wanted in my rubric for evaluating projects. So then after some back and forth, here is the goal that AI actually wrote for me. In 2025, I will maintain balance in my life by selectively choosing projects based on a rubric that considers factors such as pay, interest level, workload, and the individuals involved in a project, and my personal commitments outside work. While being mindful of these criteria, I will also leave room for gut feeling and personal excitement in my decision-making process. And then spoiler alert for part 2, that actually ends up in my planner as maintain balance in my life by selectively choosing projects based on a rubric that considers pay, interest level, people, workload, and my personal commitments outside of work. Yeah, it's just a really cool and powerful tool, and it can be really so helpful as a sounding board or to kind of broaden your ideas and also to hone in your ideas. And at the end of like every session or every section that I was working with, every life area, I did just ask it, is there anything else I should consider in this life area before moving on? And then I would just like kind of go through the list that it gave me and decide if there was anything else I wanted to think about before I moved on to the next life area. I do feel like it did struggle a little bit to keep some of the life areas like separated. Like it was definitely putting health things in the personal category and stuff like that, but it was pretty easy for me to sort of section that back out as needed. And also like I feel like when I write goals, sometimes there are goals that I have that could definitely fit in multiple life areas. So it's definitely a little bit hard to keep straight, but I think that that makes sense. And if you find that too, there's no right or wrong answer. Whatever works for you is going to work for you. So for me, it helps to have kind of like narrower focuses in some of the life areas and then have like a few others like the personal category or personal and spiritual growth category that kind of catch everything else that I don't feel necessarily fit perfectly into a different area. And you can adjust your definitions as needed compared to like how MAKSELIFE exactly defines them or how you previously defined them. For example, for this year, I decided that anything friendship related to me was going in the fun and recreation or in the like personal spiritual growth category for community, rather than having it in the family and relationships category. And I decided that the family and relationships category was only going to be about my 4 primary relationships, being my relationship with my husband and that with my 3 kids. And like that was it for that category, because that already felt like so big and there was so much I wanted to say just on my primary relationships. So I needed that separation to move all of my other relationships out into different category. For the fun and recreation category, my 3 themes are vacation planning, scheduled fun, which scheduled fun has been on my MAKSELIFE goals every single year since I started MAKSELIFE. It is the goal. It's a maintenance goal now, but it is the goal that has changed my life the absolute most. This was the area, fun and recreation was my weakest area when I first started MAKSELIFE in year 1, and now it's one of my most consistent and like best performing areas. It didn't go down last year, even during my hard year. Yeah, this is an area where I feel like I've done a lot of work historically, and now I've got more maintenance goals, but it really has such a positive impact on my life. And then my third sort of goal focus is at-home screen-free fun. And kind of running through all of that and what's going to go into my family and relationships is that our kids are getting a bit older, and a lot of the things we used to do, activities we used to do, different things like family things we used to do are not as fun as they used to be, and we need to like refresh our ideas for our children who are no longer toddlers and are more like elementary school kids. Okay. And in my family and relationships worksheet, my 3 themes are to have better after school routines with less screen time, improve our communication tools to better support the kids, and to work with my husband as a co-parent and also enjoy our relationship outside of being parents. So next up was health and wellness, at least for this video. This is actually probably, I think this is the last one that I worked on. I always really struggle to write goals in this category, and this is one where if you check out the first goal setting video in the MAKSELIFE series this year, where they talk a lot about internal and external goals, I found that like really interesting for this category as well. But my 3 focuses are to like update, fix, and rename my master calendar, which is like this online scheduling database that I'm supposed to have, but it never really worked, and it definitely doesn't work. This is definitely one where I'll be bringing AI in to help with this, and this impacts health and wellness, but I also use it for like home maintenance and cleaning and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like a central family and hub, like healthcare providers, maintenance workers, all of that kind of stuff, and how all of that gets scheduled. So I'm going to hopefully use AI to help me kind of fix that up this year and make that a better digital tool. But anyway, my other ones are having a good bedtime routine, and then more movement, fun exercise, and balanced living to feel energized. This was another one where I felt like AI was really helpful in helping me form the wording of a goal, thinking about what MAKSELIFE had said about internal versus external goals, and it wrote for me, in 2025, I will infuse adventure and camaraderie into my fitness routine by experimenting with new exercise classes, enjoying walks with friends, and seeking out fun social activities that provide movement and wellness. I just really love that, and I ended up putting it in my actual physical planner in part 2 of this video as more of like a mind map situation, but I really love how that turned out as well. And then I am going to try and keep some of these longer I will statements in the digital version of the planner, just so that I have them to like kind of revisit if I want the longer format of my goals. I wasn't able to physically fit all of those words on the page for every single one of my goals, just because my handwriting is only so small and you only have so much page space. But in the digital version, where you can kind of adjust font size and everything, it'll be nice to kind of have that as a repository to look back on if I feel like I need more information about what I was thinking at the beginning of the year. The physical planner is definitely going to be my primary planning and goal setting space, but I do plan to use the digital toolbox and the MAKSELIFE digital planners, especially for kind of journaling and reflections, which I just find so much easier to use in the digital tools, especially if I want to write like a whole journal entry about something. It's much easier for me to type that, and I've been really happy with that. I just sit with my iPad and my little keyboard in my bed and do that right before I go to sleep, and it's just really relaxing and a really nice way to spend the evening. For the spiritual and personal growth category, this is another area where I want to invest more time in this year, but my overall themes are going to be journaling practice and self-care tools. I moved journaling from personal and I moved it into this category since I focus a lot on mindset and like mental health and things to deal with stress and procrastination. In this category, I thought that was a really good fit. Then my second one is procrastination and stress management tools. And then my third one is focus on things in my control and let go of what no longer serves me. And that is kind of like a riff on one of my favorite mission statements, something that I always kind of have somewhere in my planner. It's just focus on things in my control and let go of what no longer serves me. And that's just like a little play on the mantra that it's always somewhere in my planner. And it's just one of my favorite like mantras for life, which is to focus on the things in your control and let go of the things that are not inside your control. It is what I try to say to myself anytime I am in a stressful situation or dealing with like uncomfortable conversations with people, anything like that, that is what I try and put in my mind. Mixed results on actually doing it, but that is the goal. And that's another life area where I plan to use AI throughout the year to like help me out. Sierra specifically mentioned on the call that she loves to use the AI to generate journaling prompts for her or like free writing prompts for her, and also like to feed her mantras or helpful words to keep in mind. So I'm going to have to play around with that. I haven't done that yet, but you could say like, hey, I'm feeling this or this thing happened. Like give me some journal prompts to help me get my emotions out about that. And it'll feed you useful journal prompts. And then you could do them. You can even feed them back into AI and it'll give you like, it'll say nice things to you. The Pi one especially is set up to be like very encouraging and very life coach-esque, and will just always like kind of say, that's a great idea, and other things like that to kind of make it feel more conversational. For the financial category, my 3 themes are to use and maintain our current tracking tools, to build better business financial tracking systems, and to review our long-term finances. All of these are maintenance goals really, and the financial area is the life area where I always score the highest assessment-wise, and that isn't work that I've done on the MAKSELIFE system. This is the area that I came into MAKSELIFE scoring the strongest in, and it's just, things that I've worked on my whole adult life along with my husband, but also just a product of my circumstances overall as well. Finally, for physical environment, this is my other life area that it's my favorite to set goals in, like in addition to fun and recreation. I just think these are fun goals that just make me happy and don't really involve a lot of emotional labor. So it's nice to have that in the mix, especially when you are dealing with some heavier of the categories. But the master calendar overhaul that was also on my health and wellness one, that's another one where AI was already really helpful, and I'm planning to use AI tools throughout the year to kind of improve that and also give me ideas of like what are the things I need to keep deep cleaned. AI can help you with that. 2, finish projects we've started and then start new home projects. We're in the middle of a living room makeover, got to finish that out, and then we want to do this outside makeover as well. And then the last one, cleaning and maintenance routines that are part of my planners and calendars, and also I didn't write it on there, but getting the kids involved with like our daily cleaning routines and stuff like that. So that is all 8 life areas. Then the next thing I'm going to grab is the My Personal Values worksheet from the toolkit. On screen, I am lettering and copying this down from my iPad. I already did this one and wrote everything up in the iPad. This is another one where I also used AI. I actually worked on this before I started those goals brainstorming worksheet, not the writing on the video, but doing it on the online process. So I already had those personal values and what they mean to me written down on my iPad when I went into my goals brainstorming process. But I forgot to write it right after the compass assessment. So I brought it back in after I'd finished out all of those goals worksheets. But this was very much in my mind the whole time I was working with my goals. I also went into the process of defining these values very much a skeptic, but this is one of the things that resonated with me the most this year from the MAKSELIFE goal setting system. I love this. I'm obsessed with it, and I really want to carry it into my goals. I didn't think I was going to enjoy this process as much as I did. I'm not usually like an online personality quiz type person at all, but I found this extremely helpful. So if you don't have the toolkit and you don't know how this works, what you do is MAKSELIFE has recommended this website, which I'll put across the screen, but it's personalvalue.es. And then that basically just gives you a prompt of words and you kind of power rank them against each other. So it'll say like loyalty versus family, family versus accountability. And it just gives you like a bunch of these and you just keep going, like clicking through them and choosing one word over the other. And then when you're done, it gives you a list of 5 words that are your top values and then a list of other things that resonated with you. I did it 2 or 3 times just to kind of check it, make sure. And for the most part, it gave me the same words. And ones where it did swap something out, it ended up being like another very similar word. So then what I did is I fed in the list of the values to Pi, to the AI tool, and said, these are the other words that it said I ranked pretty high on. Given this, like, what are some other words that I should consider? And then I also asked it to define each of the words that it considered and also each of the words that I had ranked in my top 5, and it gave me definitions of them. So then I could kind of mix and match using the words that the website gave me, using the words that AI gave me to kind of like adjust the definitions. And I did end up swapping one of my words as well, but the other 4 I kept from the personal values website. And that conversation kind of went with trust was the original word that was given to me by the values website. And I also had loyalty ranked like really high every time, but not quite in my top 5. And then I was just like to Pi, I was like, hey, these 2 words, they're kind of similar, but not exactly the same. They both rank really high. Is there like one word that I could use to sum them up and be one value statement for me? And it gave me back fidelity and then gave me the definition for that. And I loved that. And I felt like the definition really resonated more with me because it seems like the perfect combination of those 2. So that was another one that I felt like Pi was really helpful and that the AI, gave me some cool things to think about. AI also provided all of the definitions that I'm copying onto here. And then I just kind of adjusted the wording as necessary or combined in a couple of things that I had been thinking about from some of the other words that didn't quite make my list. And on this worksheet, I tried to stay very, very neat. This one I really want to save and have as like a feature in my planner throughout the year versus the goal setting worksheets ones where I use that more as brainstorming and kind of let myself be a bit messy. My main writing pen is the Zebra Sarasa Clip in 0.5. That is my all-time favorite pen. If you see like a bolder looking pen in the planner that's still a gel pen, that's the same pen but in a 1.0. And then the brush pen that I used in here is the Archer and Olive acrylograph pen, and the markers, all of the color markers I'm using are from MAKSELIFE and Match the Life areas. So then I went in and just like thought about my goals and how I wanted to feel at the end of the year, and I translated that into like a target score for the end of the year, and then I put that on my compass assessment worksheets from the toolkit, and then also drew that as a kind of a bolder line around the compass. I find the compass assessment score like very subjective. So this is something that I usually put in, but I don't put a lot of thought into. Just like generally, what do I think a reasonable target is? In general, at this point in my journey, I really don't spend that much time thinking about these actual numbers or like worrying over a decimal point here or a number there. And I just kind of try and think like more holistically about how I'm feeling. And I don't stress myself about what the number score is or how to give myself a number score. From this point forward, it's all gut feeling, and that is totally fine with the process. Last up for today, I'm going to work on the intentions page. This was actually the very end of what I wrote in here, but it's also the very end of what I worked on in what I would call all of this preliminary brainstorming session, most of which was done digitally and using the AI tools. So the intentions was like the last page that I worked on. Usually I find this page resonates with me a ton and is super helpful. This year I felt like it was very redundant given all of the stuff that I did prior to this. And it was just kind of like me summarizing everything that I had already talked about. And I wasn't as enthusiastic about this page. And I think that is really a testament to the order that I did things in this year, because I already at this point had like pretty good ideas what I wanted included in my goals, even though I had not done anything on like final phrasing or how I wanted it on the page at this point. But additionally, just because I am able to write so much more on the iPad, I'm able to type so much more than I am able to physically write. I had already done way more on the reflections than I'd ever done in a previous year, and like way more on the brainstorming side in terms of having like ideas typed up and the back and forth that I had done with Pi. So I had like way more of a framework than I usually do going into this intentions page process. I also usually find that this page is what like really gears you up and gets you ready to have your word of the year, to pick your word of the year. And like you, in previous years, I've combed through this list and really thought about my word of the year. But This year, I knew my word of the year going into, before I even touched this planner, I knew what my word of the year was going to be. Very early in the reflections process, I was just like, oh, that is my word this year. And I never changed my mind. I never vacillated on that at all. So I wasn't going into this page being like, let's pick a word of the year. I was like, this is my word of the year. Let's go into this page. That being said, I absolutely love the way that this page turns out visually. So one of my favorite pages in the planner, and I've already done my annual goals at the time of writing this voiceover and physically put them on the page. So I love this, and I think it's something that I will revisit. So even though it's not really resonating with me while I was doing it, I'm hoping that it will later on in the year. And my 2025 word of the year is balance. If you watched my goals reflections video, my reflections vlog, I am sure that comes as no surprise to you. I must have said the word balance in that video 900 times. But here is what my word means to me. AI also helped me come up with this, and then I did some wordsmithing to make it feel like it was more in my voice. Allocating my time and energy in a way that allows me to nurture, grow, and enjoy all areas of my life, having a loving family, a thriving business, and a well-cared-for home, and time to take care of my own needs and do things that bring me joy. That is what I am focusing on, and that is the energy that I am bringing into 2025 with me. So while I finish writing this out and then decorating up this page, the last thing that I want to just mention is how long everything took me. So I probably have at least 3 hours of footage of me just writing in this planner, and that is not to count all of the time that I spent on the reflections book and all of the time that I spent going back and forth with AI, copying the goals, of chopping things down, moving them around, thinking of them, not to mention then taking them into their final wording and then mapping them out on the page, which will be what happens in part 2 of my goal setting videos. I have already invested a tremendous amount of time into my goal setting for this year, and I just want everyone to be aware that this is something that takes a lot of time. If you haven't started on your goal setting process yet, or you're early on in it and you feel like you're already giving so much, that is how it's supposed to feel. The way that you set goals that you're going to stick with for the whole year, that are really going to stick with you, is by investing that time, is doing the pre-work and not just randomly picking things. We can all just randomly write things down, but if you're not really thoughtful about the process and don't invest that time into the process, it's not going to be worthwhile what you get out of it. So take it slow, take the time you need to do it, and to do it in a way that's going to stick with you. You do not have to have your goals done on January 1st for them to be good 2025 goals. You can keep working on it next year and keep working on it throughout the year and continuously. There is no firm starting point and no firm ending point on any of this stuff. Outside of any writing or any filming that I've done, I've spent at least 15 to 30 minutes a day just journaling on my goals and thinking about them, or doing the reflections workbook, doing that digitally for really since the beginning of December. So I really have been investing a lot of time in this, and I just want everyone to be aware that this is something, you're seeing the final pages right now, but this is something that really takes a lot of time, and there's a lot going on behind the scenes. If you have any questions about how I did the goal setting, about how I used AI, definitely leave them in the comments below. I have not recorded the voiceover for part 2 yet. This is going to go up first, so I will be able to answer some of your questions in part 2. And even after part 2 goes live, right, you can always ask me questions anytime in the comments. I always try and reply back or to answer them in another video. And you can also DM me on Instagram or even email me if you want. If you've got more questions, I'm happy to answer them. All right, that is everything for this video for part 1 of my goal setting series. Stay tuned. Part 2 will be coming super soon. But today's video, just to recap, I took the Life Compass assessment, including the actual quiz, and then transferred that over into this Life Compass to get the year started, coloring that in. Then I used that plus a ton of AI prompts to go through this Compass assessment worksheet from the annual goals toolkit, and created a brainstorming sheet for each of the life life areas with just some ideas, some statements on how I want to feel, and some overall themes for my goals for the year. I also took the personal value assessment that MAKSELIFE recommended, and then also used AI to help me flesh this out a little bit to write out my 5 top personal values and what they mean to me. I really love the way that this looks. I'm definitely going to be keeping this in my planner. And then finally, I set my intentions for the year, all of that goal setting work, plus all of my reflections. If you haven't seen that video already, I do have a end of the year reflections vlog. I will link that in the description below. You can check that out. Transferring all of those good feelings, all of those thoughts about the coming year to my intentions page, and of course my word of the year, which is balance. And that is it for today. In part 2, we're going to do a little bit of lettering on the card that came with the annual goals toolkit, the one that's in cardstock, to set up my word of the year, and also transferring over that what my word of the year means to me. I will also be working on my mission statement, which I have started, but I have not finalized yet. So I'll also be setting that up. And of course, putting pen to paper and writing my annual goals for the year. I've already done a ton of brainstorming on this. In part 2, we will get this on the page. So stay tuned for that. Thanks so much for watching today. Let me know where you're at in your goal setting process. Do you have your word of the year picked out yet? If you do, leave it in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. Happy planning, happy goal setting, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.